Hi, it's Jason from Fraser Valley Rose Farm. Today I wanted to talk to you a little bit more into the topic of plant division. I've been covering this in some videos recently, and I realize that I have a little more to cover on the questions. Two of the questions I specifically want to talk about in this video. Number one is, why do I usually divide into pots rather than putting it elsewhere in the garden or directly into the ground? And the second question and related question is then, how do you overwinter your divisions? These two here came from divisions I made 2 weeks ago, and just as an aside, as I tip this out of its pot, you're going to start to see that it started to root to the side of the pot already after 2 weeks. So even from a small division, they do start to establish in these pots quite quickly. But again, back to that question of why do I usually divide directly into the pots? And there are three basic reasons for that. The first reason for that is because it's around timing and flexibility. So oftentimes division is asked to be done in the spring or in the fall when weather is cool, and only for a couple of varieties is it better to do it in the summer. Because it's timing specific, I end up doing a lot of divisions at the same time. So it's kind of nice to be able to go into the garden, a big patch of something, and take 20 cuttings or 20 divisions out, put them into pots right away without having to worry about what's their destination right now. Now certainly if you had a spot in the garden where you were thinking of putting them straight away, that can work too. The second reason has to come down to conditions. And once again, when I put them into pots like this, I can put them into one of my greenhouses in shade or against the side of the house where they're getting a bit of shade, where I can keep an eye on the watering. If you don't have a spot in the garden that is consistently moist and covered in shade straight away, it can make it hard for these divisions to go ahead and recover from the damage that you're ultimately doing to their crown and their roots when you do those divisions. And I'll put in some footage now of some of the divisions I've done recently. But you can see there's substantial damage, and so being able to put them into a low stress environment to recover is usually a good thing. The third reason why I personally would be putting them into pots rather than directly into the ground is because I'm a plant seller, and I like the flexibility of, if I'm going to plant them this fall, that's great. If I'm going to plant them in the spring, that's great. Or I might just go ahead and sell them. So it gives me the maximum flexibility to do with their destination. But now we roll into that second big question, which is then how do you overwinter them? Because the plants that are in your garden that you're dividing from, I'm going to presume are hardy to your climate, meaning they're zone hardy. You would expect them to survive your winter. But the instant you cut them apart and put them into pots, not only do you make them more vulnerable to the upcoming winter, but you also are putting them into pots, which also makes them vulnerable. So I would anticipate that it's going to change their survivability. Even if they're well rooted in these pots, it's going to change their zone hardiness upwards by probably a couple of zones. So let's say you're in a zone 6 and your hostas, like these guys here, are hardy to zone 3, putting them into a pot and getting them well established probably will not be too much of a danger to a hosta. But if you're in zone 6 and you're taking something that's marginally hardy and then putting it into a pot, yes, it definitely can. So that would be one argument for getting it back into the garden and well rooted before the winter, and getting it established in the garden before the winter. So, but if you are going to overwinter into the pot, there are some things you can do to improve your chances. And like I say, for the hostas, if you got them well established and they're in pots, go ahead and put them into a dry, sheltered spot where they aren't going to get drowned. That's how the way they overwinter the best. Oftentimes I've said about overwintering roses that one of the ways I like to do it the best is to dry them down a little bit, and then for those harshest patches of winter weather, putting them into an unheated outbuilding, a garage, a shed, and to just give them shelter from the wind and from the moisture is a great thing to do to improve their chances. So yes, if you've taken something that's marginally hardy and put it into a pot for the winter, you may have to protect it. So that's an argument for getting it directly in the ground, but there are some things that you can do to improve their chances. All right, that's what I had for you today, is just a quick follow-up on why I put them into pots, and then also how to think about overwintering. I do expect some questions to come out of this, so drop them into the comments below the video and I'll see what I can do to help.